Okay, just wanted to make this video to just show some important changes which have been made in the version 5.97 release of Autosoft 5. We had an issue in the past where we've had to lock down the general ledger chart to prevent people from making changes to the chart, which was not intended as a means to restrict what you could do in any way. It was there primarily as a means just to protect you from causing an error in your own system. If we look at now at the general ledger account maintenance screen here, we can see this is where we would normally go to make changes to the chart. We would make changes to the description, account numbers, and any of the other attributes which are all customizable in Autosoft. An important change you'll see here, you won't have seen this before, is this message here, map to GL control type 15. Now, you may or may not be aware, but behind the scenes in Autosoft we have these what are called control accounts, and the control accounts basically control what happens when an automated function happens by the software. If you take, for example, a parts invoice, as the user you will generally come in here and you'll do an invoice to process a parts invoice, put in the things like customer name, part codes, how people are paying, all that sort of stuff, hit finalize, and in the background Autosoft does all the accounting for you. Well, it certainly does all of the entries to the GL anyway. And the way that is determined by Autosoft is this thing called the GL control accounts. Now, if we look at that particular example, there's a few things that we're involving here. So if we look at the sale, we're looking at the debtors. If it's an account sale, it needed to know where to send the debtor transactions. It needed to know where to send the reduction to inventory, as well as what the sales account was and what the cost of sales account was. Now, you'll see these are all mapped to accounts with numbers. So 3715, for example. If we look in the chart 3715, now we bring that up on screen, there's actually a visual warning here showing you that this is mapped to control type 17. Now, this was not there in the past, and users would change this to be something completely unrelated to the sale of parts, such as bank fees or accounting fees or depreciation of fixed assets, anything but what it was. Now, what was happening was this account was actually linked by the ID number here, 786, back to the mapping in this control type, and when people would then go and process a parts invoice, they'd end up with the income going into the account fees or the depreciation account, and basically, unbeknown to them, they will have completely corrupted all the mapping in their system. Now, if you see something in here in the general ledger account maintenance that has a message like this, map to control account type 17, you probably should steer clear of it because it's one of the accounts which is mapped. You can do things like change the description. Say we wanted this to be sales of my parts counter, and we were going to save that. What happens is now you get a warning message come up, and it just advises you that this GL account is mapped to control type 17. Do you want to continue saving the change? Now, you can change this, because in this case we do want to rename this to sales my parts counter. So we'll say yes, and that allows us to actually make that change and do customization and edit in the chart of accounts. Now, be warned, if we did change this to say fixed assets depreciation and you said yes to that warning, it will still allow you to make the change, which means you'll still get the sales going into the depreciation. But if you look at this, it's going to tell you map to account 17. So see this as the warning. If that's got a message like that, it means it's actually an account which is reserved by the system to do a special function. Now, there's some other areas which this is happening as well, and they're in areas such as the workshop sale types. And if we look at this here, just the retail, you may not be able to see this in your system because it's actually just controlled in your Setup Pro Manager. But 3620 here, if we have a look at that one, just pull that up on screen. We can see this here. It tells us it's mapped to the sale type retail, which means it's once again mapped and reserved with a special function. You can once again make changes to this, but you've really got to make sure this account stays the retail sales account for labour. You can't change it to be something else. So it's an important message for any bookkeepers or business owners who think they want to go in and start doing some customization on the chart. In the past this was locked just until we got this worked out, but now you can come in here and you can make changes. But you must respect these messages. If you see these messages come up on the screen, then you're not allowed to, or basically you're not allowed to change them. Or if you do change them, make sure that you keep it relevant to what it is. Now you can see this here, another type. This is mapped to the product group, NPN, environmental compliance, which is up here under the stock product groups. And you'll see in here, if I bring up NPN, environmental compliance, and look at the general ledger utility, 3690 is a mapped account. So very, very handy information. You've got complete transparency now to show you that these are mapped accounts. So with this one, either I just make the blanket rule, you don't mess with the ones which have got the blue here, or if you do, you make sure that the change you make is just a slight tweak to maybe reword or maybe renumber just in line with the account sequencing that you're creating, but you make sure that it always is the environmental compliance fee account and don't go changing it to anything else.